Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Céline Jacquin. I'm project manager for Hot Open Cities in Latin America, Guatemala and Mexico. And we will share this presentation with you with my colleague, Hippolyte, who is also project manager for the Caribbean part of Open Cities. So in this presentation, what we would like is to share with you some thoughts and challenges we have at creating communities for new open mapping projects in this region. So we will share ideas, and after that, we would like to hear from you, your ideas, your reactions, your experience. What is Open Cities? Open Cities is a methodology that aims to create data for integral risk management in specific localities, engaging the active participation of local communities and open mapping communities. It seeks to generate missing data for public policy, and also create and consolidate long-term capacities in administrations and organizations so that this flow of information can be maintained over time. It's developed in collaboration between the World Bank, GFDR, and HOT. It has been developed in several cities in Africa, Southeast Asia, and now in Latin America and the Caribbean, specifically in St. Lucia, Jamaica, Dominica, Mexico, and Guatemala. So this year, from 2021, HOT is developing new activities in Latin America in view also of the creation of an open mapping hub after the 3 open mapping hubs in Africa and Southeast Asia. So in this context, the objective behind Open Cities project is to outline collaborations with long-term potential and initiates collaborations with open mapping communities in the region, as well as provide support to allow their growth or consolidation, to partner with the sector of risk prevention and sustainable development, and also to match better the opportunities, the funding, the training with the needs, adding efforts to communities' agendas. How is OpenStreetMap communities in Latin America? So it exists, it's strong in most countries, but also diverse. There are larger, smaller communities, but specifically in Central America, except Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and also in the Caribbean, it's small, very small. In the Caribbean, it's almost non-existent. So indeed, in the countries where we are developing the projects, we can't count on a very active community. The Spanish-speaking countries and Brazil are united in the same communication channel, the Telegram LATAM OpenStreetMap, and there are also several channels by countries, or also in some sub-regions, such as Central America. So at this moment, we wonder what are the best ways to create and strengthen the relationship between the organization and the current and future community of OpenStreetMap collaborators, specifically in the humanitarian sector. So this presentation seeks to raise some of our issues, some of our reflections, to have an open conversation with you after. So in Guatemala, as well as in the 3 Caribbean countries, there is no OpenStreetMap community as such, but some contributor with actually strong experience, who also share the same intentions and desire to see a community appear. And there are also some communication channels, but not really a group able to draw a local agenda. So we wonder how, in these circumstances, to develop a project that is based actually on collaboration with a community of mappers. We outlined 3 main ways we would like to discuss with you. That can be developed alone, depending on the capacities of a project, but ideally they are developed in articulation. The first approach is to rely mainly on the existence of global OpenStreetMap community without a strong local representation. So an advantage of this approach is that we can assume a pre-existence of average or high-level technical knowledge in this community, also philosophical and political conviction on the OpenStreetMap project, and potentially a large number of contributors, so a large number of contributions, given that there is a continuous interest in collaborating with hot activations for certain segments of OpenStreetMap community. Another advantage is that there is a mature system of work in OpenStreetMap for verification and validation, as well as there are enough hands in the project at these stages. And it's a task on which HOT can focus to work with validators. The disadvantages of centralizing the effort over global mapping is that it's necessarily limited to remote mapping, putting the field mapping at the second level of importance, also the mapping with local knowledge. And it also inhibits the efforts to generate knowledge, philosophy, and competencies and interest towards the subjects at the local level. So first question there could be how to improve a collaboration with communities around remote mapping operation when there is an interest for a long-term project or long-term interest in a specific area. This could be the case of open cities projects in general, but also in areas with a high frequency of disasters, such as Haiti, for example. A second approach can be the creation from the scratch of a varied community with the view of integrating along the way the possible contributors in the country under a group logic. So they can be involved as they want, they can just be aware, they can get involved at a reflexive level, they can participate in the decision-making of mapping activities, also lead new groups, train new mappers. In Guatemala, we had actually a strategy to be able to create a community to collaborate with. And it was to form student groups as a base for a long-term community that could be fed with some most interested members and also supported by people with leadership and with technical knowledge in the country. So during this year, 2021, we made contact with people who in the past were interested in creating youth mapper chapters. We formed a working group representing universities, public and civil organizations, but also the few OpenStreetMap experts we knew. And thinking that the existence at some point of this little critical mass would itself generate the demand and interest to engage more and for more people to engage. The pretext for forming the group and also the instrument allowing it to consolidate and to provide a more concrete discussion was to organize a highly visibility activity together. So we organized a workshop called To Get Towards an Open Mapping Community in Guatemala, which now continues with direct management by youth mappers. And it allowed that at this moment, 2 chapters are being planned. And the pre-existing OpenStreetMap local experts are totally part of the process. An advantage of this effort is that it's a first step for a sustainable community. We believe that. And also the linkage effort it required allowed to build trust with other actors and experts in the area. So it's very useful for the project itself. The difficulties of such a strategy is that it's the amount of effort and time to really build the foundation for a community, and also the timing at which this bond is released to let the community evolve on its own is very critical. By happening too early, it may not result in a long-lasting community, but mostly a community linked to the process, to the project. And releasing it too late could result in generating a too direct link between the organization and the community and not creating an independent community. A third approach can be to mobilize the regional OpenStreetMap community around the country, so neighbors, to create interest in supporting the community building process at this point. So collaborators can be invited by OpenStreetMap channels for their experiences, knowledge, and training capacity. Also for their strategic visions and lesson learned by around forming new groups, but also for their capacity to link people all over the area, given that there is intense relationship between countries in real life. On the other hand, as it happens in the Caribbean and also in Guatemala, the attempts to mobilize sector experts in a broader understanding of the geospatial sector or environmental resource management sector around the project can create awareness about participatory methods and the potential of these data, and generally support the cause of citizen science and volunteer geography geographic information. So it's another way to assimilate into the community technical people, high-level people who can become mentors for the communities. An advantage of this approach is to generate a strong collaborative network at a broader single country, but sub-regional or regional level. But also risk can be not allowing national ownership by the locals and perhaps then generating less motivation or interest on their part. Also, the involvement of a wider community can create conditions for a more open dialogue and also more disagreements, but also more empathy towards new mappers. So with these 3 points together, we have several other questions. And we wonder if you have experiences or reflections on the best strategies anywhere in the world. We wonder how to promote in the most exciting way mechanism or formation and involvement of young students specifically, but also high school students, how we can see in France, in the United States with the teen maptivist movement, also in Peru. How to foster these processes from scratch and how to ensure that their motivation and their commitment related to creating responsibility in the mapping and then preserving the quality of data. Also, how to bring together the interest of both decision makers and organizations that needs data to operate and to the existing public contributors to open mapping, as well as new audiences all the time. So it seemed obvious that the selection of a work theme that everyone sees as critical is a key, is necessary, but we wonder if it's enough. And if we can foster this interest, how can we preserve this interest from being just one-off? So these are several questions. Now I'll give the floor to my colleague Philippe to offer another question more focused on decision makers and a new question we have there.
Hi, again, my name is Philip Hippolyte. I'm with Open Cities, Latin America and Caribbean. One of the project managers on the project, and I'm here to talk to you about promotion of collaborative data with questions on data quality. In the Western community, it's no mystery that to promote open mapping, we have to raise awareness for decision makers, public institutions, and get them to invest in their efforts in building communities. It's also evident that in developing countries, there's a lack of basic critical data, and that providing these mapping elements for buildings, built-up areas, and infrastructure helps make a difference to them in their development and policies in general. What we have an issue with is in the lack of collaboration and participation in the ecosystem, and getting them involved needs to take some deeper consideration with the communities. Among them, there's certain criteria that creates resistance. Even though the benefits are obvious to us, what we have is that there's the need for working models that will give us more regular procedures. We need to have collaborative measures to involve communities and civil society, and even involve the actors who even come as sometimes as detractors of government. And then sometimes we find ourselves in a position where we have to create a responsibility for information that we don't have necessarily full control over. The doubts that involve with the stakeholders are normally about the veracity, the completeness, and the homogeneity of data. And it creates a bias, which is really centered around the lack of knowledge of what can be done with data, especially when they believe that the data can be changed and just corrupted by anyone. There is no perfect strategy. We understand this, and it's just that the citizen science is now taking methods continuously for different audiences and different methods of advocacy to create what can be done in the Western community. Some of the strategies that could be looked at are some like co-design of platforms and methodologies with the authorities in questions, and the ability to have specialists for verification of the data, so that it builds that confidence in collection and hosting of the data. And then also documentation is very critical. Many projects don't have that robustness of documentation, and it goes beyond just the technical aspect, but just the overall administration of documents and having it for review. And particularly for review, taking the past lessons learned in projects and understanding the gaps and how to mitigate the issues that you get with incorporating different methods. And of course, then there's the ability to look at a project over a long time and create timestamps and see what works well when, and create a checking process basically for some of these data collection and data verification methods. In Open Cities Latin America, we had a strategy in one of the countries, Guatemala, to prepare mapping data. And it was basic mapping data pending further definition of the problem, considering that the basic data is a necessity for most of the problems to be addressed, even when it doesn't exist in official public sources. They took the time to engage in the global community during a period of mapathons and with the private sector, and to focus on areas in Guatemala where there was very large amounts of data. The intention was to build a workflow for improved validation and to enter into a process of building linkages with the decision makers with a demonstrable process. During this process, we found that there was expressed doubts with the officials that there need to be a link with the framework of the data created so they can be stored in repositories and then have it validated by HOT, and then to ensure it wasn't affected by any kind of other misrepresented corruption of the data. So there are many things that went on with that project. Is it a situation where a viewer just looks at the data and they can only look at it at a certain technical level, but not at an advanced level? So they can't change the metadata and the data sets. Is this one of the solutions? Many things have to be looked at in such projects and delve deeper into. With regard to the community, there are different regions around the world, and there have been expressed different critical doubts in the mass editing and various projects for how we do mapathons with any given actor. The feeling expressed in different occasions is that the fear of an appropriation of the map of a region by actors externally change with the reality with each locality. The extent of a mapping with low local knowledge, in this case, can be understood as low quality and high margin in areas that don't have a lot of mapping expertise and validation expertise. And this happens when you have large volumes of data and the mappers are not able to review with the local ability. And this needs to be improved as a function. So it's understood that overall mapping quality really should be dependent on a balance between large communities of mappers or a smaller group of seasoned mappers using best practices. Where there's a low or non-existent communities in certain areas, this balance is very difficult, and it really is something that has to be worked over time and find some other way of best practice to get good mappers and validators in the communities such as these. This is prevalent in the Latin America and Caribbean community, so this is one of the reasons why we're really trying to push this particular point. So the question is, how do we move forward? What is the right balance of quality versus quantity? Is there a roadmap that can be developed within HOT and all the expertise that we have and then broadcast through the larger OSM ecosystem? What are the strategies that, especially with the Open Cities Latin America community, that's already a funded project, already on stream, that we can quickly incorporate to enhance the way we put our first step forward in such a project, in such a new environment? Basically, what's the best way forward regarding community to get it right in the Latin America open cities community. Your thoughts are welcome. I'm sure you had a wealth of experience. I appreciate any feedback from this. Thank you.